Order. Andrew Weston to move the motion, and if people could leave the room as quietly as possible, please. Thank you. Andrew Weston.
Thank you, Mr. Dowd, and I beg to move that this House has considered the matter of access to dentistry for cancer patients. It is, of course, as always, a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I want to start this debate, which I am delighted to have secured, by paying tribute to my constituent Michelle Solak-Edwards, who is here to listen to the proceedings today. Her phenomenal campaigning on these issues is the reason that we are all here. Back in 2016, after a routine health assessment, Michelle found out that she had triple-negative breast cancer, a devastating diagnosis, followed by 9 months of gruelling chemotherapy. Among the many, many challenges Michelle faced in this time was a deterioration in her dental health. This is a common, yet rarely discussed, side effect of both chemotherapy and radiotherapy. Unlike other physical side effects of cancer treatment, which may be medicated with the free prescriptions that cancer patients are entitled to, any side effect requiring dental treatment must be paid for. And as we all know, the costs of dental treatment, even if someone is lucky enough to be registered with an NHS dentist, can be overwhelming. For Michelle, the significant costs of her dental treatment had to be paid for at a time when, like many other cancer patients, she was unable to work because of her condition. When Michelle was going through one of the most difficult experiences a person can face, she found that accessing affordable dentistry was yet another obstacle for her and others in her position to overcome. So, like all great campaigners do, she took action to make a difference. She set up an online petition calling for better access to dentistry for cancer patients and for dental care to be free for cancer patients for 5 years from diagnosis or until the end of life if the diagnosis is terminal. Crucial, given that dental issues do not always become apparent straight away at the outset of cancer treatment, and the issues caused can take a number of years, in some cases, to present themselves. Within weeks, she had more than 130,000 signatures on the petition, with support from dentists, surgeons and oncologists. The petition now has the backing of almost 200,000 people, many of whom are cancer survivors themselves, and it is a privilege to be able to highlight its importance to the Minister today. So why is it important? Primarily because there is an indisputable link between cancer and dental health issues. As the National Cancer Institute have said, chemotherapy and radiotherapy can cause dental side effects, with both therapies altering the balance of bacteria in the mouth, leading to ulcers, tooth decay and potentially serious infection. The link between cancer and dental health doesn't end there, because existing dental problems can worsen during cancer treatment, and this can then impact the effectiveness of treatment or lead to it being delayed. This is why it is widely recommended, including by the British Dental Association, that a dental health assessment should take place after a cancer diagnosis and before the start of treatment. But while the link between cancer and dental health is clear, the pathway from a cancer diagnosis to dental health treatment is often blocked. The biggest issue here is the crisis in accessing affordable dentistry. This challenge is not unique to cancer patients, with 1 in 4 of Britain's adult population unable to see an NHS dentist in 2022. In my own and Michelle's local authority area of Trafford, only 4% of dental practices are accepting new adult patients on the NHS, and this is by no means a low number based on current availability. What this means for most people is the choice of going private or going without. And when the costs of private dentistry are so high, this isn't really a choice at all for many, especially for those on lower incomes. Even if you are lucky enough to access NHS treatment, costs can still be sky high, with the price of dental charges increasing by 45% over the last decade. I'm not attempting to be party political here, Mr. Dowd. What I'm suggesting is that there is a link between being a cancer patient and being on a lower income, because, as I mentioned before, many do need to give up their work. Macmillan estimate that a cancer diagnosis leads to a person being around £570 a month worse off, with 33% of patients having to give up work, as I said, because of their condition. So cancer patients are more likely to be priced out of the dental treatment they need, and in cases where dental treatment is required before cancer treatment can begin or continue, this can have potentially life-changing consequences. Every day lost risks lives. So let's look at specific examples and take the case of one of Michelle's campaign supporters, Kelly. Kelly is currently waiting to start bisphosphonate treatment, which is needed to strengthen bones that are at risk of breaking due to cancer. But to start this vital treatment, she must undergo important dental work, which is proving impossible as she cannot see a dentist. That a person's cancer treatment can be delayed, impacting their life quality or even survival chances because they cannot access dental care, is clearly unacceptable. I know the Minister understands the crisis in accessing dentistry, and I'm aware of the Government's recently published dental recovery plan which aims to address this. But the BDA have said that this plan fails to embrace the fundamental reform that both parents and dentists so desperately need, with no new money provided and inadequate measures to tackle the workforce retention crisis. If we are ever to achieve the goals of Michelle's campaign, then we must get this right, because the speedy provision of dental care for cancer patients would be significantly undermined if, in practice, many cancer patients were still unable to see an NHS dentist due to an unaddressed workforce crisis. While addressing the crisis in NHS dentistry and the affordability of dental care is not something that can be achieved overnight, there are more immediate things that could be done to improve the pathway from cancer diagnosis to dental treatment. Currently, there is no guarantee that cancer patients will be informed by their doctor that they should seek a dental checkup before undergoing cancer treatment. This is despite guidance from the NHS Specialist Pharmacy Service, the Royal College of Surgeons, the BDA, and the British Society of Special Care Dentistry, stating the importance of patients being dentally fit before starting cancer treatment. Michelle's campaign is therefore calling on the NHS to provide information to all newly diagnosed cancer patients, telling them of the need to seek dental assistance prior to cancer treatments commencing. This does happen in many places, but we want to see this enshrined in law. This is information that could be provided by GPs and would include a list of dental practices in each area who could treat the cancer patient on the NHS. I'd also like to share the experience of Hayley from Reading. Hayley is another supporter of Michelle's campaign, and her story sums up the issues I've tried to raise today. When she was 21, Hayley had chemotherapy and radiotherapy for non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. The radiotherapy caused severe dental issues. Now, aged 44, Hayley has breast cancer and has had to remortgage her house to spend £11,000 on removing the remaining 6 teeth in her lower jaw and replacing them with implants. At no stage has Hayley been able to access NHS dentistry. Experiences like this are why this campaign is so important. No one wants a situation where cancer patients are losing out on the healthcare they need because they cannot afford it and they cannot access it. We must act on this underappreciated crisis. I therefore encourage the Minister to address the asks of Michelle's campaign in her response, including both the long-term aim of free dental care for cancer patients, but also in the short to medium term, the possibility of prioritising cancer patients for NHS dentistry and ensuring that there is clear guidance on the need for cancer patients to receive dental care provided at first point of contact with their GP or cancer team. I'd also be particularly interested to know what consideration the Minister might be able to give to joining cancer and dentistry services together for cancer patients, offering outpatient appointments for sufferers in hospital alongside their other treatment. This would seem to me a very practical way of ensuring that people could access the care that they need. I'd also like to invite the Minister to meet with Michelle and myself, as the Shadow Minister kindly did earlier today, and I know Michelle was very appreciative of that, so that we could discuss these issues in greater detail. She will appreciate that I have not been able to cover all aspects of this important issue today. And likewise, I accept that there is an escalator of asks here, some with financial implications. Michelle has a mine of further information on the subject, and I know would be keen to talk the Minister through some of her ideas for funding these changes. Ultimately, we must all work together on improving access to dentistry for cancer patients. As I said earlier, I do not consider this party political, but something that we must get right. It is the least we can do for people who are already facing one of life's toughest challenges.
Access to dentistry for cancer patients. Richard Ford.
Thank you, Mr Dowd, and it is an honour to serve under your chairship. Since being elected to represent Tiverton and Honiton almost 2 years ago, one of the most regular issues that has appeared in my inbox and in my mailbag is access to NHS dentistry. And I think that it's common across the country to have difficulty accessing new NHS dentists if you're not already registered. But I think there are some parts of the country where this is particularly difficult, and this is particularly difficult in Devon, which is often regarded by many as being a so-called dental desert. What we've heard from the government in recent months is a suggestion that one of the ways to address these particularly difficult shortages of dentists and is perhaps to try to attract qualified dentists into an area that is regarded as a dental desert. So, for example, we've seen the proposal to pay one-off incentives to qualified dentists to move into a dental desert like Devon. But the truth remains that it is still very difficult, though I appreciate this new proposal hasn't come in yet, given it's a one-off incentive. There is no long-term incentive for dentists to move into areas that are dental deserts. Obviously, that's difficult for many of my constituents, but what's more deeply worrying is for those constituents who are living with cancer. And this is not a hypothetical scenario, it's the experience for people in rural communities like Devon where finding a new dentist is impossible. I'd like to recount a real-life story from one of my constituents who is caught in just this scenario. Robin Watling lives in Tiverton and is aged just 55. He is struggling with advanced cancer. Because of the treatment and the medication that he's on, his bones and teeth are weaker than they would otherwise be, and it means that regular checkups are more important for him. His wife, Sharon, contacted me last December and told me how, after booking a checkup, he received an abrupt phone call just a few days before it was about to happen, informing him that the practice was no longer treating NHS patients and that if he wanted to go ahead with his appointment, he would need to go private. This is clearly a massive issue for a couple like Robin and Sharon. Due to Robin's vulnerable state, Sharon has had to go part-time to become his carer, and has meant that she's not able to work the hours that she used to, which would perhaps possibly have afforded her more money with which to pay for private healthcare treatment. So instead, they pursued the idea of finding an NHS dentist. They were held on the phone for 3 hours before being cut off. In the end, it all became too much, and Rob ended up removing one of the teeth that was causing him pain by himself at home. This, I don't need to tell you, I don't need to say to the House, this is a shocking, appalling situation to have to contend with while suffering advanced cancer. Despite years of working hard and paying into the system, this couple are now left adrift with no support or access to dental care. I should say, in some of the correspondence that members receive, you have constituents who rage at you with anger. This couple approached me with great modesty, with great humility. They absolutely weren't seeking to make any sort of political point or score points. They just wanted to let me know in a very factual way the experience of a rural couple contending with cancer and trying to find NHS dentistry on the state. The British Dental Association has laid the facts bare. Oral cancer is one of the fastest growing types of cancer, and it's killing more people than car accidents every day. If oral cancer is diagnosed early, then dentists can play a key role in diagnosis and referral, and that way survival rates can be as high as 90%, compared with just 50% if diagnosis takes place at a later date. NHS dentistry, let's say it as it is, it's in crisis. This is another example of where the government has continued to let people down and stand by as our vital services crumble. The NHS dental budget has been cut in real terms by £1 billion, while the Conservatives have been in power, and this is a shocking legacy of neglect. My constituents weren't party political about this. I am going to be. I think that this government has presided over the crumbling, decaying of NHS dentistry and has given lip service to proposals to do bits and pieces about it that do not amount to contract reform. So I urge the Minister, for the sake of Rob, for the sake of Sharon, and for everyone who's trapped in a situation like this, please take on board the urgency when it comes to dental care on the NHS for cancer patients and those who might become cancer patients. Thank you.
Thank you. Paulette Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair. It is a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I'd like to thank the member for Stretford and Ermston for securing this really important debate. Chair, as someone who has lost family members and friends to cancer, I frequently come to this place to try and shine a light on the huge problems in our health service that disproportionately impact people with cancer and their families. Dentistry is no exception. Just like many colleagues here, my constituents in Erdington, King's Standing and Castle Vale have contacted me because they're unable to find an NHS dentist. There are over 100,000 people living in my constituency and only 7 dental surgeries, and at least 3 of those aren't accepting any new adult patients. A constituent without a dentist contacted me and said, I am desperate for an NHS dental repair. I now have an abscess in my jaw. Please help me. This case is one of many. The response I received from NHS England advised my constituents to call 111 for any urgent care services and said that they are now working to address the challenges facing the service right now. Those challenges in our dental system are only exacerbated for people in our communities living with cancer. The Less Survivable Cancers Task Force says that in the UK, 90,000 people are diagnosed with one of the less survivable cancers every year, an average of nearly 250 every day. If you have a less survivable cancer, you are twice as likely not to be diagnosed until your symptoms are severe enough to go to hospital compared to someone with a more survivable cancer. And I personally know that this is far, far too long. 80% of people with pancreatic cancer are diagnosed at stages 3 and 4. People with cancer need fast and effective dental services in a system that recognises the difficulties they will be facing during their treatment. Dentists are also play a huge part in detecting, diagnosing and managing oral cancers, which kill over 3,000 people a year in the UK. Unlike the less survivable cancers, oral cancers have a survival rate, as my right honourable member said earlier, of 90% when diagnosed early. So it is absolutely crucial that for those people, dentistry is quickly accessible and free during treatment. Both of these issues come down to one main problem: money. Over the past decade, dental charges have increased by 45%, and the YouGov found that last year, nearly a quarter of respondents to their survey in England delayed or went without dental treatment because they just couldn't afford it. Because there are hidden costs in cancer care, like increase in energy bills and frequent travel to and from hospital, and the burden of rising dental costs is too great for people with cancer. So while I think it is a great idea to introduce free dental treatment for all cancer patients, we need to think bigger, reform the NHS and make it fit for the future. These two huge problems facing our health service, a crisis in both cancer care and NHS dentistry, and with waiting lists for both at record highs. As a nurse, it breaks my heart to say that the NHS has never been in a worse state. The last Labour government delivered the shortest waiting times and the highest patient satisfaction in history because we properly invested in our NHS. Chair, it is high time we did it again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dowd, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. Can I first thank the Honourable Member for Stratford and Urmston for obtaining this very timely debate, and Michelle for the wonderful campaign that she has been doing on this issue. I would like to declare an interest that I am the chair of the All Parties Parliamentary Group on Dentistry and Oral Health, and hopefully that should remind the Minister this is an issue which is a cross-party issue, and many of her colleagues from her party are also concerned about this. Dentistry is in crisis across the country, whether that is in Devon, Somerset, or in constituencies like me of Bolton South East. My honourable friend who brings the debate has detailed the importance of free dental treatment for all cancer patients, and I was listening to my honourable member for Birmingham Erdington, who just spoke now about the details of the effect of cancer patients, especially through her experience as a nurse herself. And of course, I was listening to what the honourable member for Tiverton and Honiton said about his dealing with a constituent who had a cancer issue and who then, in fact, had to take his own teeth out, which really is not acceptable in 21st century Britain. So I strongly support an exemption for people who are suffering from cancer and therefore should be able to have all the treatment necessary that they need. In fact, I had a constituent contact me who had breast cancer, and she told me how confused and overwhelmed she had felt, and the last thing in her mind was dental health. But a dental checkup should be essential, in fact, before starting chemotherapy. Imagine the complication of your treatment when recovering from an infection with a suppressed immune system. There are countless of horror stories out there about the expensive dental work that is required by many cancer patients, and they simply cannot afford it, especially with the cost of living crisis and the rising cost of bills as well. So I urge the Minister that she will get this done and that this will be made available. But of course, Mr. Dowd, the reality is that even if the Minister made the commitment today, which I urge that she will, many people will not be able to access due to the ongoing crisis in NHS dentistry in our country. For example, we know that pregnant women and new mothers theoretically enjoy free NHS dentistry. Indeed, official data shows that over the last 3 years, 1.2 million of them missed out on this entitlement because they were not able to actually access an NHS dentists. It's crucial that this crisis is urgently addressed for all patients. And the Minister will be aware that in 2021, 2,000 odd dentists quit the NHS, and in 2022, a BBC survey found that 9 out of 10 of the dental practices that still offer NHS services are not accepting any new adult patients. And 8 in 10 are not taking on any more children, even though children are supposed to be a special category. Many of them have been left without access to basic health care, resulting in dental deserts across England. And of course, the problem is getting more and more because many are leaving, and those who have stayed, the morale has reached rock bottom. And what is the government doing about this? They've been in power for 14 years. Recently, they introduced so-called dental recovery plan, which many dentists have said is not even worth the title, because it won't stop the exodus from the workforce or offer hope to millions who are struggling to access care. And if the whole point of this plan was to stop dentistry becoming an issue, then I'm afraid the government has failed on this alone. This is a crisis that remains a burning issue in our communities across the country until we get real change. Because let's face it, constituents like mine in Bolton South East have felt that NHS dentistry has been abandoned and left to rot by this government. The system isn't working. I've had many constituents write to me about trying to access NHS dentistry, and I have personally made phone calls trying to get them an appointment, and it's been impossible to get an appointment until my office writes and persuades them to accept someone. And when the NHS Dentist Recovery Plan was introduced, the Health Secretary assured the House of Commons that the plan was backed by 200 million of new funding. She said very clearly there is a 200 million on top of the 3 billion that we already spend on NHS dentistry in England. And she reiterated that the 200 million is additional money. I was there very surprised to hear the Minister, who's in our place, explain to the Health and Social Care Committee that the plan to deal with crises in NHS dentistry was not in fact backed by any additional investment. The Minister stated that it is all coming out of the 3 billion that is currently being underspent. I hope the Minister understands that these two statements stand in direct contradiction, and on the 20th of March, in the Chamber, I made a point of order on which I raised this matter with the Deputy Speaker, and I asked the Minister to come to return the House to correct this record. So far, she has not done so. I hope she will do it today. Saving dentistry isn't rocket science. We need an NHS contract that are actually fit for purpose, with funding that means practices can be sustainable. We need real reform now.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you for chairing this meeting today, and thank you to the member for Stretford and Urmston for bringing the debate today. Thank you to all of the members who've spoken. It's really good to have your personal constituents' input and thoughts on the issues that they're facing, and especially to Michelle for the campaign that she's been running and the reason that this is here today. It's incredibly important that these issues are aired, and I'm looking forward to hearing from the Government Minister in relation to what the government is planning to do around improving this situation, because it clearly cannot continue as it is. I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that we're doing in Scotland, and we have been doing in Scotland, but first I want to say that honestly, this sounds like a conversation that we were having in Scotland 20 years ago. I remember having these conversations about being unable to get an NHS dentist. We moved house in 2016 in Aberdeen, And there was 2 different dentists that I had the choice to go to, both of them NHS dentists, and everybody was like, there's no problem getting an NHS dentist now, because of all of the things that have been put in place in Scotland to ensure that we can have those NHS dentists. So over 95% of the population in Scotland are registered with NHS dentists and are able to go and get those appointments to have free dental checkups in Scotland on the NHS for everybody who is registered with an NHS dentist. And as I say, that's over 95% of the population. Part of what happened in relation to increasing the amount of NHS dentists was the creation of a new dental school in Aberdeen, specifically because we recognised the fact that Aberdeen was an area that was really struggling with dentists. And so we created a new dental school there that has had a significant impact on the numbers of dentists in Scotland. We've also got various things in order to ensure that dentists will move to areas where they're struggling to get dentists, like the Honourable Member was mentioning. So there's a £37,500 Golden Hello package for those people, trainee dentists, who are willing to move to areas where we desperately need dentists, and that is over the course of a 3-year period of practising. So it's not like they get it all in one day. They've got to be there for the 3 years to get the £37,500. There's also been a change in the amount of money that dentists get for the treatments that they provide, in order to ensure that they are being properly compensated for that, and that they're able to do the treatments, and it's affordable to continue to be an NHS dentist and not feel determined to go private. And just lastly, around the NHS dental workforce and how that works. Brexit has had a significant impact, though. We are struggling as a result of loss of dentists because of Brexit. It is the case, my husband was talking about the fact that his most recent dentists have been Greek and Polish and Romanian, and that change in the relationship with the EU means it's more difficult. People are less likely to want to stay in the UK as a dentist, where they could stay in the country of their birth, closer to their homes, with people that they feel might actually want them, rather than people who have voted for Brexit. So there's a negative change there that's causing a problem. In terms of specifically around cancer patients and the cancer strategies, in Scotland we've got a 10-year strategy for cancer. It is a national priority for the Scottish Government, and everything that's being done in relation to cancer support is about having a person-centred outcome there. So person-centred support, person-centred approach, ensuring that personalisation, so that everybody gets a variety of the supports that they need, rather than a variety of the supports that exist, that they happen to, you've got this type of cancer, so we will give you this. It's very much a person-centred approach. Now, if you are undergoing cancer treatment, there's a variety of ways in which you could be eligible for free dental treatment as well as free dental checkups. So if you're getting some universal credit and you meet income thresholds, you can get the free treatment. If you are actually an inpatient in hospital and you're treated by the dentists in hospitals, which we do have, again, that treatment can be free. That treatment is free, sorry. And also there's a low-income health scheme as well that is in place. But because of the much wider availability of NHS dentists in Scotland, people are able to access those services, and they're much more likely to be able to get that free treatment because of that increase in the numbers. So I didn't want to talk for too long, because obviously this is not a concern that affects a significant number of my constituents, because they do have the access to those services at this incredibly worrying time. They are able to get those appointments. It's one less thing for them to worry about when their lives on a complete and total roller coaster at that point. For the Minister, I would just say that we really need to be ensured that we're doing everything that we can for people that have had a cancer diagnosis and are going through cancer treatment. Their lives have potentially changed dramatically overnight, and having a lack of dentistry services that are accessible and affordable is one more thing that they don't need to be worrying about, right now. They need to be concentrating on getting through their treatment, on the support that they're receiving, on ensuring that they can get well as quickly as possible and follow doctors' instructions and guidance, and they don't need to be worrying about this. So anything that the Minister can do to ensure that personalised treatment is provided, that increase in access to NHS dentists is there. And if there isn't a widespread increase in access to NHS dentists across England in the near future, is there anything that the Minister can do in the meantime to prioritise the treatment of cancer patients so that they can access that as soon as possible, appropriate treatments that they can afford, until the NHS in England is in a position where the dentistry services are at a reasonable level and people can actually access treatments.
Thank you, Mr Dowd, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairship. And I want to start by thanking the Honourable Member for Stretford and Urmston for securing this debate and for speaking so powerfully on how the dentistry access crisis is affecting cancer patients and survivors like his constituent Michelle. I had the pleasure of meeting Michelle along with the Honourable Member earlier today, and it was really eye-opening to hear the stories of what cancer patients and survivors face. And I'm delighted she is here today, and I want to thank her for all of her campaigning and the support she is providing now to people suffering pretty much what she had to go through. I'm afraid to say, though, that we are seeing the Dickensian state of NHS dentistry under this government. Most of us might think that our teeth would be the least of our worries if we were diagnosed with cancer, but as we've heard today, oral health is incredibly important. And whilst undergoing treatment, many cancer patients who previously had little or no dental issues can actually experience loss or crumbling of teeth, together with a whole host of other dental problems that occur during or after treatment for cancer. Poor dental hygiene can lead to infections which can interfere with a patient's chemotherapy. Radiotherapy can cause acute complications to your teeth and gums from tissue damage. And in rare cases, extractions afterwards can result in bone necrosis where the jawbone essentially dies. So it is crucial that timely access to dentistry, including any required treatment and preventative advice, is provided before, during and after cancer therapy to maximise positive outcomes. The last thing any cancer patient needs is to find that they can't access a dentist when they need one. But as the Minister is aware, the current crisis in access to dentistry is shocking. After over a decade of neglect, patients are desperately queuing around the block to see a dentist. 8 in 10 practices aren't taking on new adult NHS patients. And as we've heard today, 1 in 10 people have tried DIY dentistry. It is some of the most vulnerable people in society who need to get seen that are actually missing out. And I want to share with the Minister some of the stories that have been shared with me ahead of this debate. Michaela from Alsford said, "I lost all my root canals and my teeth just started falling to bits on chemotherapy. I wasn't able to see an NHS dentist and I couldn't afford private. I'm awaiting treatment again for cancer for the second time and urgently need my teeth sorted before I have chemotherapy again, but I can't get in to see a dentist." And Carol from Shropshire said, "I was with an NHS dentist but missed a checkup while going through chemo as I was very ill, so I got knocked off. I had problems when taking ibudronic, tablets for bones, had to go for emergency treatment, and the NHS dentist in Shrewsbury is 17 miles from my home. This was 2 years ago. I've still not been able to register. I've tried surrounding towns. I know I'm not on my own. There are hundreds in the same situation as me." What does the Minister have to say to both Carol and Michaela? Can she say if her department has made any estimate of the impact that the access crisis is having on cancer patients and survivors? And as we heard today, according to research by Macmillan Cancer Support, 4 in 5 cancer patients are hit with an average cost of £570 a month as a result of their illness. If patients face oral health complications because of their treatment and they can't be seen on the NHS, most will simply go without. This idea that we have a 2-tier system where those that can afford to go private and the rest go without is absolutely obscene. So how is the government working to minimise the financial cost of cancer on patients and survivors, which can itself knock back their health? It was disappointing to hear from Michelle how when she was diagnosed with breast cancer, she wasn't actually told about the impact her treatment could have on her oral health by her doctor. Surely I know the Minister will accept this. This advice should be routine. And the DHS guidance for delivering better oral health actually says that cancer patients should receive appropriate care to manage and stabilise their oral health in advance of treatment. But it appears that not all cancer patients are getting this support. So I urge the Minister to please try and address this and raise this where possible. And in my own team, one of my staffers' parents was diagnosed with throat cancer in 2020, but didn't get his orthodontist appointment to have 4 teeth removed until a year after his treatment. So can the Minister comment on the fact that the latest estimates show that in February 2024, there were over 325,000 patients waiting for oral surgery in England. That's nearly 200,000 since 2015, almost a decade ago, which was the last time that the NHS target was actually met. So how many cancer patients are seeing their treatments delayed as a result? There is also the dire issue of cancer diagnosis themselves. Oral cancer is now one of the fastest growing types of cancer in the United Kingdom, with mortality rates up 46% on a decade ago. So it now kills over 3,000 people a year in the United Kingdom. But if diagnosed early, oral cancers have a survival rate of roughly 90% compared to 50% if diagnosis is delayed. As dentists are often the first to spot the early signs of this disease, can the Minister say if she has made any assessment of the contribution the dentistry crisis is having on these appalling mortality figures? In the Commons, as has been said by my honourable friend for Bolton East, in the Commons in February, the Health Secretary claimed, I quote, "There is 200 million on top of the 3 billion that we already spend on NHS dentistry in England." But that is not true. Notwithstanding that 1 billion of this is actually covered by patient charges, not central government, she also subsequently admitted this will come from existing budgets. So really this is only 200 million as part of the money she might spend on NHS dentistry if the 400 million yearly underspend persists. Mr Dowd, the Health Secretary, also claimed, I quote, "The opposition's ambitions reach only as far as 700,000 more appointments, and our plan will provide more than 3 times that number of appointments across the country. That is 2.5 million. But that's not true either, is it? It's not true because the government scheme will only run for 1 year, and Labour's plan would deliver both in the here and now and into the future. Perhaps the Health Secretary might correct the record on that too. Mr Dowd, my honourable friend, the member for Stretford and Urmston, shared how joining up services in hospital for cancer patients could actually address access to dentistry for those very high-risk patients. NHS dentistry is dying a slow death under this government, and the people who rely on NHS care cannot wait another 5 years for a Tory government to decide that this time they really mean it and they will reform the NHS dentistry for good. Labour's fully funded plans would provide 700,000 more urgent appointments a year, supervised toothbrushing schemes in areas of deprivation, and a targeted recruitment scheme in left-behind areas, all paid for by cracking down on tax dodgers. And we would get on with reform to the NHS dental contract that this government has put off for 14 years. Cancer patients, new mothers, rural communities, and millions of others are being failed every year that we let the decay in NHS dentistry continue. Thank you.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Dowd. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship today. And I do congratulate the Honourable Member for Stretford and Urmston for securing this really important debate on behalf of Michelle and all of the other petitioners. I would be delighted, of course, to meet with Michelle to hear her views, and I do particularly take note of her call for all cancer patients to be advised of the potential impact on their oral health of cancer treatment. I think that's a really solid and actionable thing that I undertake to take away today, and I look forward to meeting Michelle in due course with him. I'd also like to take this chance to pay tribute to the Mouth Cancer Foundation, the Oral Health Foundation and DentAid, to name just a few of the excellent charities that provide support and advice to so many. Thank you to all of those honourable and right honourable members who've spoken today. It's been an excellent debate, I think. To the honourable member for Tiverton and Honiton, I would just like to say to him, I fully appreciate the challenges in Devon. He will no doubt welcome that there will be a mobile dental van, which for very underserved and geographically distant areas is actually quite a boost, and that will be forthcoming for Devon in the near future. But in addition, one of the real problems, I think, in Devon, I'd just say it's not his fault at all, but his in his area, only on average around 57% of commissioned units of dental activity are actually undertaken by dentists, and I'm sure that's something that he might like to talk to his ICB about, and if I can help in any way, I would be delighted to. But as our dental recovery plan, as I will come on to talk about, attempts to do, is to incentivise further NHS dentists to really ramp up the delivery under that. And we're already seeing, in fact, hundreds of thousands of new dental treatments just since March the 1st when this plan went live. Unfortunately, that data is not publishable as yet, but I'm feeling really optimistic, and I totally understand what honourable members are saying, that it's not good enough. I totally get that, but I do think that we are seeing very rapid improvements, and I encourage him to talk to his ICB. Yes, I will.
On that point about 57%, only 57% of the units of dental activity being taken up in Devon, isn't that a workforce issue?
No, how it works is that the ICB commissions dentists to provide NHS dentistry with a number of units of dental activity that NHS contractor undertakes to fulfil. And so then if the NHS contractor doesn't do it for whatever reason, then at the end of the financial year, the ICB claws back the money that they gave that NHS dentist to fulfil that contract. So I'm not judging anything, I'm just merely giving him that information, which I hope is helpful to him. May I? Okay, yes, I will, but I don't want to run out of time.
I thank the Minister for giving way. And on that point, I can explain as well that it is actually very much a issue of being able to survive, because many of those dentists say that the reason they return those things back is because if they took out all the NHS appointments, they would not be able to survive financially.
I hear what the Honourable Lady is saying. My own assessment is slightly different to that, but I obviously respect her view. To the Honourable Lady for Birmingham-Erdington, who I've worked with for many years on all matters to do with early years intervention, and I think she makes a really good point about less survivable cancers. And I would just highlight to her that with the 160 diagnostic centres being opened, that will actually help with early detection, and she makes some very good points about the importance of good oral health assessments for those people. I think she's exactly right to raise that. But the other thing I would just point out to all honourable members is that actually it was astonishing to me when I came into this role in November, but in fact since 1948 when the NHS was started, only between 40 and 50% of adults in England have ever received NHS dentistry. It's not as if there used to be, as the honourable member for Aberdeen North said, was it 90% you said in Scotland receive NHS dentistry. In England, it's extremely different, and it always has been under governments of all parties. So I just put that to honourable members as a piece of information, which I think is really, really important to know. To the honourable member for Bolton South East, I would just like to highlight to her the Smile for Life, which is the big part of the dental recovery plan, which is actually about, and the honourable member opposite also raised, the shadow spokesman raised the issue of Smile for Life, which is a big part of the dental recovery plan, to really focus on the earliest years, so getting pregnant mums to have their teeth checked, and also, of course, to focus on good oral health in babies and toddlers, so that by the time they go to school, they are actually used to brushing their teeth twice a day. So good oral health is absolutely critical. And I would also say, in answer to her point and the point of the shadow spokesperson, that both the Secretary of State and I made very clear and very full responses to the Health Select Committee on the issue of where funding has come for the dental recovery plan. So just then, moving on to the things that I actually intended to say, Mr. Dowd, I'm absolutely aware that almost everyone in our country has been personally affected by cancer through themselves, a friend or a relative, including members of my own family. I really do understand this issue. Last year, just over 340,000 new cancer patients were diagnosed in England. That's almost 1,000 every single day, or 1 every 90 seconds. And we know that receiving a diagnosis can be terrifying, and we should never lose sight of what those patients and their families are going through. So I'm really glad that this petition has been brought forward to highlight the terrible disease of oral cancer and the impact on those with other cancers of their oral health. But before I turn to cancer, I do want to just quickly outline the steps we've taken to improve access to dentistry across the country since publishing our recovery plan on the 7th of February. Now, as colleagues will know, since COVID lockdowns, access has simply not recovered fast enough. And it was my top priority on appointment to this role last November. And I'm really proud that the plan is creating around 2.5 million additional NHS appointments. We're supporting dentists to take on patients who haven't seen a dentist for 2 years through a new patient premium. We're increasing the minimum value of a UDA to £28 as a minimum and helping patients to find a dentist through a new marketing campaign. We're bringing dental care to our more isolated communities with mobile dental vans and encouraging dentists to work in underserved areas through Golden Hellos for 240 dentists. And then, as I've mentioned, the Smile for Life initiative is designed to really get in early and help families to understand the importance of good oral hygiene. And not only that, but we're also making progress to increase the workforce. And in fact, there were 1,352 more dentists doing NHS work in 2022-23 than in 2010-11. So it isn't the case that dentists are disappearing from the NHS. There are 1,350 more. And then, as announced in the long-term workforce plan, we're going to increase dentistry training places by 40%, so that there are over 1,100 places by 2031-32. And we're also increasing training places for dental therapists and hygienists to more than 500 a year by 2031-32. And we're also importantly exploring whether the prospects for a tie-in could ensure that dentists spend a greater proportion of their time delivering NHS dental care rather than receiving that very expensive training and then perhaps going off to do private dentistry, which means fewer people have access to NHS dentists. So it's great to see that since we published the plan, 7th of February, it went live on the 1st of March, and already hundreds more dental practices are already opening their doors to new patients. And I do look forward to giving a full update to the House on the recovery plan shortly, where I'll be able to talk to colleagues about the significant increase in the number of patients being able to access an NHS dentist. Now, in the Honourable Member for Stretford and Urmston's own integrated care board in Greater Manchester, there is in fact the second highest number of dentists doing NHS work in England. That's almost 71 dentists per 100,000 against a national average of 53.5. And I understand that the ICB there is supporting a local initiative called the Patient Access Quality Scheme to improve access to NHS dentistry that requires practices to commit to seeing new NHS patients and, really importantly, providing urgent care access. The practices have been asked to prioritise vulnerable patients and patients with serious conditions, including cancer. I think that's a fantastic scheme by the ICB, and I encourage other ICBs listening to this debate to follow suit. The scheme has brought over 200,000 extra appointments for patients in the last financial year, which I'm sure the Honourable Member is delighted about. Now, turning to his specific points on charges, the government responded to a petition on the 9th of November that requested free dental treatment for all cancer patients. And our reply to it pointed out that in 2022-23, during that year, 47% of all courses of treatment to NHS dental patients were delivered free of charge. And that for those who do pay for dentistry, they are, of course, providing an important contribution to NHS budgets. He will know, I'm sure, that dentistry charges have been in place almost since the foundation of the NHS 75 years ago. And as I've already pointed out, under governments of every party, it's only about 40 to 50% of adults who've ever received NHS dental care. Now, despite inflation and other spending pressures, we froze charges between December 2020 and April 2023 to help all of our constituents with the cost of living pressures. And since then, we've only raised the charges proportionately. But the Honourable Gentleman is right to say that cancer patients face additional financial burdens. And that's why the government is committed to supporting every patient who faces financial hardship with full or partial exemptions from dental patient charges available through the NHS Low Income Scheme. And also, as the Honourable Member for Aberdeen North pointed out, as happens in Scotland, for those being treated in hospitals. And that will not change. But I'm sure the Honourable Gentleman will also appreciate that it's not feasible at a time when NHS budgets are under extreme pressure to offer free dental care to every patient regardless of their means. So we are instead focusing our efforts on continuing to make sure that the most vulnerable are supported to access NHS dentistry, including patients with cancer. So in 2021, there were just over 9,100 oral cancers, which was equal to around 3% of all cancers. And it's quite clear that cancer must be caught at the earliest opportunity to give people the best possible chance for recovery. So dentistry plays a crucial role because dentists check for signs of oral cancer in every routine checkup. And that is a contractual requirement for all dentists to prioritise patients at a higher risk of oral cancer for more frequent recalls. And turning now to the Honourable Gentleman's specific point about prioritising dental appointments for cancer patients, I am aware of instances where patients have faced unacceptable delays to the start of their treatment because of a lack of dentistry appointments. And I agree with all honourable and right honourable members that these delays are just unacceptable, and we're committed to making sure that everyone who needs a dentist should get one. And that's why, along with the raft of measures we're introducing to improve access to NHS dentistry across the country, we're also publishing new guidance to make it crystal clear to every integrated care board that they have the responsibility to commission additional specific services in their local area when they identify such problems as cancer patients being unable to access timely treatment. So, Mr. Doyd, as soon as we published our dentistry recovery plan on the 7th of February, I turned my attention to seeking out the expertise and knowledge of dentists and their representative bodies to understand their perspectives on the need for dental contract reform. I'm specifically looking now at what reforms would improve access to dentistry and encourage greater capacity, as well as how we can consult with the dental profession and prepare for further announcements later this year. And I can assure honourable members that in every decision, I will keep pushing for every patient in our country to have access to the dental care they need, whilst protecting our cast iron guarantee to support those who are most in need with full or partial exemptions from dental patient charges for those on low incomes. Thank you, Mr. Doyd.
Thank you. Thank you. The question is that this House has... I want to give Andrew Weston the opportunity to wind up. We've got a couple of minutes left, if you would, Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dowd. And can I begin by thanking everybody who has contributed to this debate today. We have a considerable amount of expertise in the room, particularly my honourable friends, the member for Bolton South East as the APPG chair, and the member for Birmingham Erdington as a former nurse and national lead for the Local Government Association on all things health. I am very, very grateful to colleagues who have contributed to the debate in various ways, but focusing more generally on the considerable issues facing those seeking to access dentistry. I do just want to drill down more specifically on the issue of access for cancer patients, in just saying firstly to the Minister that I very much appreciate the offer of a meeting. I think that that will hopefully move us forward, and I also welcome her commitment to look at how we can deal with the information side of this, but with respect, and she would expect me to say this, that is perhaps the easiest of these issues to tackle, and I would just gently say to her that at no point did I ask for all patients to have free dental treatment, just cancer patients to have dental treatment, because theirs is not an experience that has come about as a result of perhaps not looking after their teeth, but as a direct result of other treatments. But I will be cognizant of the Chair's clearing of his throat and perhaps raise some of the other issues that I was hoping to in the meeting with the Minister. And as I say, I'm very grateful both to her, to the Shadow Minister for meeting myself and Michelle earlier, and everybody who's contributed. Thank you.
The question is that this House has considered access to dentistry for cancer patients. As many as of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. Order, order. The sitting stands adjourned.
Ident. Grand Committee Room Ident.
The proceeding has ended. 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 The proceeding has ended.